First, the always low prices store just patented prices that always change.
Then the man who manages $14 trillion says the safest investment strategy is the riskiest.
And a baby company just hit $500 million in sales during America's worst baby bust ever.
This is Nick.
This is Jack.
It's Tuesday, Teen Boy, Tuesday, March 24th. And today's pod is the best one yet. This is a Teen Boy.
The top 3 pop business stories you need to know today.
Yetis, Walmart just won a patent for dynamic pricing and said they're digitizing all the price tags by end of year.
The era of price extraction is here, Yetis, so we've got your back with a field guide.
Oh, Walmart, always low prices. Always?
Yetis, Walmart has saved millions of Americans billions of dollars with their very low prices.
It's a fair point, Jack, but the smiley face stickers they used to give out at the entrance, the greeters may need to bring those back sometime soon.
Because 2 separate reports suggest that surge pricing is coming to Walmart in an aisle near you.
I mean, Jack, add it all up. I'm looking at the whiteboard here. This is our 3rd story on this kind of topic in 3 months, right, man?
True. Instacart and Uber Eats both got caught offering different prices to different people.
We should point out Walmart's a slightly different story, but it is directionally the same. We are living in a priceocracy, baby.
Because here's the news. Walmart told CNBC that all their U.S. stores would retire their price stickers by the end of the year.
And replace them with digital shelf labels that can instead be updated instantly.
No more price stickers, price screens.
Now we should point out also, Jack, that Walmart says this is not personalized pricing, right, my friend?
Everyone's going to get the same price within the store.
Yeah.
But this still feels like an uh-oh moment for us consumers. Now, Yetis, companies love when the prices are digitally shown because then they can be optimized.
Optimized. Jack's using air quotes, by the way.
After 4 years of inflation, us consumers have trust issues, Nick. And we assume that optimizing prices only means one direction, up.
Well, despite you and I bringing this up with our therapist, Jack, Walmart points out that there are some benefits to digital pricing that do not include ripping us off.
First, less manual price-changing labor lets those workers help customers in the aisle instead of changing the stickers.
And digital prices help the delivery guys, because if they're walking through aisle 6, the label will now flash before the thing that they're looking for.
And Walmart says they can use digital price tags to mark down perishable items in real time to reduce waste.
50% off brown bananas, 50% off only the brown bananas.
All right, so Walmart says digital price tags will help them lower prices.
Walmart's saying digital price tags are the best thing that ever happened to us, Jack.
But this next bit seems to confirm our suspicion that this is all about raising prices.
Because get this, Yetis, according to the Financial Times, Walmart just won a patent that uses machine learning and algorithms to set prices.
To quote the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, a system and method for dynamically and automatically updating item prices.
Sorry, Jack, pause the pod. My retail is a little iffy, but does that sound like surge pricing to you?
Potentially. Our elected representatives think it does.
And so a senator from New Mexico just introduced the Stop Price Gouging in the Grocery Stores Act.
And naturally, Walmart has sent their governor affairs staff to go educate the lawmakers about their real plans.
Can you sprinkle on a translation for us, please, Jack?
Walmart's lobbyists are lobbying the lawmakers.
Yeah, to not make that a law. Now, this is also going to cost Walmart a lot of money. I mean, Jack and I crunched the numbers on this on the whiteboard.
4,600 stores. 200,000 products per store. We're talking digitizing 1 billion price tags.
Walmart has to buy 1 billion new digital price tags for all their stores.
That's 1 billion screens. So of course they're going to selectively raise prices where they can to recoup some of that cost.
And prices are, the way we see it, the main character of our economy. So Jack and I will prepare you for this era with our takeaway.
I'd call him the villain of our economy.
Jack, can we please get one takeaway, please?
Jack, what's the takeaway for our buddies over at Walmart?
We need a field guide to price gouging.
Yetis, you were with us during the pandemic, and we told you about how there were many variants of inflation that popped up every few months.
You had inflation, you had shrinkflation, you had swapflation. Those were the main 3. Now, with technology taking over the price tag, we need a similar lexicon to describe this priceocracy we're going to be living in.
So here's how Jack and I are looking at it. First, we've got surge pricing, which is the short-term anonymized supply and demand mismatch, like Uber's on New Year's Eve.
Then you have dynamic pricing, which is a little more long-term. It's what airlines and hotels have been doing for a long time, changing the price depending on when the flight is.
Then you've got algorithmic pricing, which is dynamic pricing put on steroids, right, Jack?
The prices are constantly updated for profit maximizing.
Which has now led to surveillance pricing, which we're not sure is here yet, but it will be unless Congress bans it.
Surveillance pricing is using AI to stalk you online and to read all your publicly available data to offer you one price that maximizes your price you're willing to pay.
We also call it spy pricing because it's spying on your Instagram page.
Now, personalized pricing is similar to surveillance pricing. Pricing optimized for you only to maximize profits for them.
So add it all up, besties, and look, as business guys, Jack and I are able to see both sides of this business consumer coin.
But when push comes to shove, we side with the consumer. Now you know what you're up against.
And that's your price gouge and field guide. For our second story, America's $14 trillion man just proposed a total change to America's investing strategy.
Because in modern America, not investing in the stock market is a recipe for going broke.
Yes, it is, and we will relate this to Shaquille O'Neal. But first, to sprinkle on some context, Jack, the most famous letters written of all time, who is it?
Okay, when it comes to CEO letters, I'd say Warren Buffett is number 1, Jamie Dimon is number 3, and Larry Fink is number 2.
Larry Fink, he is the man who manages $14 trillion of America's money, mostly through mutual funds that people own in their 401ks.
Because he's the CEO of BlackRock, the huge money manager.
But Jack, in his CEO letter this year, it opened pretty bleak. I mean, he kind of went economic Debbie Downer on us this time.
The CEO of BlackRock pointed out that according to company research, 1/3 of Americans cannot afford a $500 emergency.
And the bottom half of Americans have basically zero net worth.
And a record number of Americans withdrew from their 401k early last year to pay for a financial emergency.
Brutal, not fun numbers, besties. But Larry did sprinkle on a few signs of hope, did he not, Jack?
Yeah, financial experimentation is in the air. You got Trump accounts getting babies into the stock market early, and states are doing their own version of that program.
However, Larry Fink does point out that every American also has a retirement account, including you, Yetis. Yes, you got one too.
All Americans have one, but they're being horribly mismanaged.
Yes, they are. And you know that retirement account as Social Security.
Get this, Yetis. Social Security has a $2.8 trillion investment fund that belongs to us, but it's a huge missed opportunity right now.
The way to think about the situation with Social Security is like, Jack, could you put this in, I don't know, NBA basketball terms for us, please?
It's having Shaquille O'Neal on your roster, but keeping him on the bench.
Doesn't make sense.
Because every U.S. worker and every U.S. company pays a Social Security tax as a payroll tax.
Not too shabby, 6.2% each up to certain limits.
It's a lot of money, 12% per employee. And that money pays out thousands of dollars a month to retired people like a pension. It's a huge program.
Have you seen Shaq's shoes? Yeah, that's Social Security.
So Social Security is a giant source of poverty prevention. In that sense, it's been a huge success.
Oh yeah, giant win for the New Deal going back 91 years now.
But Social Security is on track to become depleted by 2033.
What Jack and I are saying is kind of like M&Ms. We are running out of Social Security.
Because we haven't raised taxes and we haven't cut benefits.
And our population's got some number problems. Too many old people, not enough young people.
Social Security's become the third rail of politics.
But in this letter, Larry Fink highlights an opportunity to fix Social Security and get every American in on the stock market while he's doing it.
Because in between the payroll tax and the benefit checks going out, in between is a $2.8 trillion trust fund that's doing nothing right now. And it's doing nothing by law. Because the Social Security Trust Fund can only invest in zero-risk assets like government bonds.
So, Jack, what's the suggestion to get Social Security off the sidelines?
Basically, put Shaq in.
Yeah.
Get that money off the sidelines and put it into the stock market.
Have Social Security investing in NVIDIA, JP Morgan, Costco, Ralph Lauren, the rest of the stock market.
Now, we should point out the conflict of interest. Larry and his financial firm would benefit tremendously if we did this.
Larry'd be sitting there and taking a 0.1% management fee on that $2.8 trillion. And you know what that sounds like? Exactly.
And also, Social Security is supposed to be, secure.
But, Jack, to quote our buddy Jimmy Cramer from our recent interview with him, the only safe strategy is growth. So, Jack, what's the takeaway for all our buddies wondering about Larry Fink's legendary letter?
Fear of investing is more dangerous than the risk of investing.
Now, Yetis, you're going to notice what we're saying here. Every time a public figure talks about stock market performance, they use this disclaimer.
Past performance is no guarantee of future results. And the reason they say it is because it's true. They don't want to mislead people, and you have to disclose that investing in stocks is risky.
But honestly, that disclaimer scares a lot of people from not investing at all. Yeah, it's no guarantee, but go give it a shot, guys.
Because historically, it rises 10% per year, and it's America's biggest source of wealth generation.
What Jack's saying is not investing? Well, in modern America, that's a recipe for going broke.
Yetis, prices are constantly rising faster than incomes. The only way to combat that, in our opinion, is to own stocks.
And the U.S. stock market is an insane generator of wealth, growing 10% a year on average since, forever.
If you look back to the year 2003, over the 23 years since, boring basic U.S. government bonds are up 90% in those 23 years.
Okay, but Jack, how does the rest of the stock market compare to that?
It's up 700%. So the Social Security Trust Fund could be trillions of dollars bigger if we would just take a risk and put that money in the market.
Get Shaq in the game. Yetis, in modern America, the wild reality that no one talks about is that if you never take a risk, you'll go broke.
That's why we think Social Security should absolutely invest in the stock market so that every single American benefits.
Now, a quick word from our sponsor.
For our third and final story, Babylist has become a $500 million business by doing one thing and one thing only: register babies.
But now Babylist is opening its second physical store in New York, and it looks like a Hollywood studio.
Oh, Yetis, you are not going to want to nap on this one. All right, but first, Jack, if we were pitching a venture capitalist, this is not a good VC pitch, right, man?
Millennials are marrying late. They're having fewer kids. Gen Z's not having kids. And we're in the middle of a baby bust.
And yet, Babylist business is having a baby boom right now.
In 2011, the Babylist founder wrote code for her website during her Amazon maternity leave while her infant was napping in the room next door.
And the concept? Simple. Universal online baby registry.
15 years later and 3 of my kids later, they've raised $50 million and they're doing $500 million a year in revenue.
Get this. Babylist is now used by half of all first-time parents in America.
Babylist is more involved probably than your mother-in-law.
And the sleeper hit, interesting strategy here. What is it, Jack?
1/10 of the revenue comes from sales of breast pumps, which, yes, are FSA or HSA eligible.
Because funny thing, Yetis, despite America having its lowest birth rate ever, those babies that are being born, Jack?
They're born to anxious but well-off Zillennial parents who will buy anything so they can just take their Zoom call in the conference room and keep their baby B for 30 minutes.
Willingness to pay. Nothing eases the mental load of parenting like an expensive macrame activity gym, which comes with a built-in Art of Pop baby carrier.
But Yetis, what Nick and I found fascinating about this, besides the cathartic release of our parental stress, was seeing retail make the ultimate strategic switcheroo.
That's right. Digital is getting physical, baby.
As Babylist rose, the physical brick and mortar competition of baby stores started to fall.
Bye-bye, baby. Closed 120 stores. Babies R Us went straight up baby bankrupt.
So it looked like Babylist won. But then in 2023, this digital disruptor flipped the script and went physical. They opened an 18,000 square foot store in Beverly Hills. They have an all-terrain stroller track so you can test drive your stroller suspension. They have a real car in the store so practicing dads can see what it's like to hoist that car seat into position. And
it's a squat thrust. Also, clever business strategy here.
There's such high intent among the customers strolling at a baby store that this store can actually charge brands rent to get their products in front of those customers.
For example, Rihanna launched her own maternity line a couple years ago, and what did Babylist do, Jack?
Probably charged Rihanna to get that product in the store.
And glam up the section that highlighted it. But here's the news, Yetis. Babylist is opening their second experiential arena store in New York City, but one little caveat here.
New York City parents are different than LA parents.
Yeah, I can bring the disclosure having been a baby in New York City. It's a different thing. I mean, you're lucky if you're in a closet sometimes. But besties, there is one more key reason Babylist business is accelerating, even though the baby population is not. By the way, Jack, have I told you about my baby bagel idea?
You have not.
It's a little pole on the stroller you can put the bagels on so you can hands-free feed the bagels to your baby.
Pole?
It's 4 inches long. I'm still workshopping this thing, but if someone could get this from the New York store, I'd appreciate it. Jack, what's the takeaway for our buddies over at Babylist?
The future of stores is Hollywood studios.
Now, Yetis, if you've seen a TikToker try to sell you a $400 baby carrier, the odds are that it was filmed at the Beverly Hills Babylist store.
Because the store is designed like a studio, with lighting and staging. The architect was probably Warner Brother himself.
And in New York City, they're going even further. The New York City Babylist has a stage for influencer content creators.
They're even adding a podcast studio, so your favorite momfluencer can record a show from Babylist, New York.
When you add it all up, it's like CNN and QVC and Alex Earl had a baby born inside a Target.
Most of Babylist sales are online, and most customers won't visit the New York City or the Beverly Hills locations.
But here's the key. The rest of the country will see the video shot there in short-form video content on their phones.
So here's the equation. Small store footprint plus an influencer studio equals nationwide reach.
Besties, that's why Babylist didn't just build a store. They built a studio too, and are doing $500 million in sales. Jack, could you whip up the takeaways for us for T-Boy Tuesday?
The coolest idea in Larry Fink's legendary shareholder letter? Social Security should invest in stocks.
Because the fear of investing is more dangerous than the risk of investing.
For our second story, Babylist is opening its second store in New York, which, has an influencer studio too.
It's like CNN, QVC, and Alex Earl had a baby born inside of a Target.
And our third and final story. Walmart is making all price labels in stores digital by the end of the year. And they patented an algorithm pricer.
Yetis, every company is algorithmatizing the prices, so you need to know what you are up against.
But besties, this pod's not over yet. Here's what else you need to know today.
First, in case Uber Black wasn't fancy enough for you, there's a fancier option getting imported to America. It's called Wheelie.
The London-based ride hail is entering New York City, and it will be the most premium ride hail app there is.
Now, interestingly, the business model still relies on gig workers, but the drivers have to attend a 3-day training on how to be a chauffeur.
Because the drivers must wear a suit, they must wear a tie, and they must sign non-disclosure agreements.
And second, Elon unveiled plans for his new Terafab over the weekend. This will be the biggest chip factory in the history of the world.
The goal is to produce 1 trillion watts, a terawatt, of compute every year.
And now he says it'll produce 2 times the amount of chips that the U.S. currently consumes.
Which is crazy. And it's also a joint project between Tesla, XAI, and SpaceX. Just merge already.
Could just merge. You guys are looking at each other. And finally, the BTS K-pop concert that we told you about yesterday in Korea. Well, it got a smaller crowd than expected, and it actually hurt the stock.
BTS is back from the military, but their stock isn't.
No. It fell 15% on word that the concert was smaller than expected. Besties, if you have any info at all, let us know in the comments. Now, time for the best fact yet. This one, an answer to yesterday's T-Boy Insider Trivia.
Yesterday, we asked you, what variable is the biggest determinator of your happiness according to the World Happiness Rankings?
Yeah, there were 4 options. Is it food, weather, social media screen time, or how good your soccer time is? Which one has the biggest impact on happiness in a country?
Nearly 40 votes came in on our poll on Spotify, and most of you said weather. The actual answer, though, was social media. The rankings showed that countries where youth use social media more than 5 hours a day self-reported being happy much less.
So if you take 2 identical countries in other metrics, like they both have cloudy weather outside, but they're different in social media consumption, that will make all the difference. Yetis, you're looking fantastic today. Jack, you're looking... Oh, wait, 1 sec. Oh my God, those bananas that were 50% off, they're now $500. Walmart just changed the price on us, dude.
You see? Us suspicious consumers were right.
Yetis, if you haven't yet, tap to follow us because that way you get T-Boy every single day and it actually helps us go up in the rankings.
And Nick and I will be back tomorrow with the best one yet.
Follow T-Boy. See you mañana. And before we go, a happy birthday to legendary Yeti Livia Nogueira from Campinas, Brazil. She's turning 10 and loves her dog and used to want to be a dog when she grows up.
And happy birthday to Abina of Ray, celebrating in New York City with Sager.
And a happy birthday to girl dad Arvin Parko, hanging out in Phoenix, Arizona.
Happy birthday to Heather K-Word in Auburn, New York.
And George, good friend, enjoy that 29th birthday in New York City.
Happy birthday to Caitlin Schmidt in St. Petersburg, Florida.
And A.A. Ron Santana, happy birthday in Lawrence, Massachusetts, listening with his wife and kids just outside Boston.
And happy birthday to the word okay, which was first printed in the Boston Morning Post 187 years ago.
Okay, Jack. Okay.
This is Jack. Nick and I both own ETFs of the S&P 500.